Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We have one more talk before lunch break. You may have heard of them, the people that help actually run the foundation and vote on things, the Matrix Governing Board. And we're going to have a talk on that from our host, Josh Simmons. Please give a very warm welcome to Josh. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I am so glad you are here. Governance can be a bit of an abstract topic, and sometimes I see people's eyes glaze over when we start talking about it. The level of interest that we have had in the Matrix.org Foundation's governing board is a super encouraging sign for the health of our ecosystem and where we're going to go together. Our time is brief today. This is like a 30-minute session, and we're 5 minutes into it already. I don't want to make anybody late for lunch or the group photos, so we're going to make the best use of this time that we can. What I would love to do is first introduce myself briefly, talk a little bit about the journey that we're on, and then create an opportunity for the governing board members to introduce themselves. I see a bunch of you here. Thank you. And then I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of time for Q&A. We'll do some, as much as we can. And then please put as many questions as you can in the Lab 4 Matrix room, because we definitely want to make sure people's questions get answered, whether or not it's in real time or not. So, hello. Thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. I am Josh Simmons, the Managing Director of the Matrix.org Foundation, completing my first year here. And 3 months ago, we hit a pretty big milestone in the growth and development of Matrix. Open governance is a hell of a journey. I don't know how many other FOSS projects any of you have been involved with, but it can be painstaking when people, we are all here because we care about something deeply. And when people get involved with governance, they do it because they care that much more deeply. And so we have intense conversations. We disagree passionately, and we have creative tension with each other, representing the perspectives and backgrounds that we bring to bear from our lived experience and the people that we work with. And it is through those disagreements and through that combination of perspectives that we can create something in Matrix and at the Matrix.org Foundation that truly serves the whole of the ecosystem, or increasingly serves greater cross-section of the ecosystem, right? So I just want to reflect a little bit. If you were here yesterday for the opening sessions, you'll know that Matrix has hit its 10th anniversary this month. And this year also marks the 5th anniversary, I think technically, of the launch of the Matrix.org Foundation, the moment that the founders of the project, Matthew and Amandine, Keegan, just there are a whole bunch of you, I can't name you all, I'm sorry, made the decision to transfer the assets of say a lot of core projects, heck, the trademark of Matrix, to a nonprofit organization. The Matrix.org Foundation is a nonprofit, it's not a charity, and by transferring those assets to a neutral nonprofit, putting it outside of any individual's sort of property, and having it not belong to a for-profit company, that's a huge gift. That was a decision that gave us a chance of building something that was bigger than any single one of us. And this is part of the journey of every successful open source project, is ultimately giving away power and empowering the community. And so as we have the foundation first founded about 5 years ago, it's been given the assets, and then a year ago, the foundation hired me. And so we've had a number of people who've been working for the foundation on a volunteer basis or a contract basis previously. But I'm the first dedicated manager of the foundation, and I'm definitely not going to be the last. And what this means is we're on a journey together of building something that brings more and more people in, right? I think some people have noticed at this conference that there's a larger cross-section of the community represented than at previous events. And that's a direction that we want to keep going. So I don't want to monologue too much more. What I want to say is that the governing board is, in my view, another key step on the level of having formed the spec core team in the first place as a volunteer steward of the specification. I would say it is another huge step, especially insofar as the governing board is elected by y'all, right? People, you get to choose who is on the governing board. And that means that the governing board is accountable to you. I'm accountable to the governing board. And collectively, this is how we build an organization, how we shape an organization and a project in a community that meets more needs and ultimately helps us deliver on the mission of bringing free, open, secure, privacy-respecting, interoperable communications to the whole goddamn world, right? And we've got some work to do to get there, but we're well on our way. So with that said, I will start us off. I think, Andrew, you have the microphone. Turns out I'm one of the governing board members. The managing director of the foundation is, by default, a governing board member. But I'm just one. And we have about, gosh, nearly a dozen of you here today. So what I would love to do, Andrew, if you would be so kind, is to pass around the mic. And Bram, I'm going to pick on you, throw you in the deep end here. Governing board members, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, your name, the project or organization you're affiliated with, and where you're from.
Cool. Yeah, my name is Bram. I'm a representative of the Open Wider ecosystem on the governing board, and I'm personally affiliated by Matrix because I'm the main maintainer of the Elm SDK. So yeah, that's it, right?
That's perfect.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you, Bram.
Hello, my name is Tobias. I'm the representative of the KDE community on the governing board. KDE is an associate member, which means an organization that doesn't pay money. Personally, I'm involved in writing the NeoChat Matrix client.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kim. I'm a representative for Matrix community events. I'm pretty involved for the last 2 years in organizing different community events. We did 2 Matrix summits here in community summits here in Berlin last year and the year before. We also did some events at other conferences such as FOSDEM and all over Germany. And I'm very happy to be helping out at the Matrix conference this time around. Personally, I've been involved with Matrix since 2017 when I started to host my own home server, and it all went from there. Yeah, I also work at a company that works with Matrix technology. It's called Nordic, and yeah, I'm happy to be here today. Looking forward to your questions.
Hello, I'm Sumner. I started using Matrix in 2018, I think, at school. And for the last three and a half years, I've had the pleasure of being able to work at Beeper, which is obviously building on top of Matrix as well. I represent the individual users as an individual member on the governing board. I didn't run as the Beeper representative, because my history with Matrix goes significantly further back than that. So, who is next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin. I am from the Seattle area. I'm here as a governing board representative of FutureWay Technologies, which is a US-based research subsidiary of Huawei. We have recently joined the Matrix Foundation as a gold sponsor earlier this year. Personally, I'm actually relatively new to the Matrix world. I only started using it maybe about a year ago, but I've been in open source basically my entire professional life, contributing to various Rust projects and Rust itself since around 2016, 2017, in academia, my own company, and now as part of FutureWay. I'm also developing a new Matrix client called Robricks. And just a quick selfish plug there, written in Rust, and it's sort of a proof of concept of our Rust app dev and UI toolkit ecosystem. So yeah, excited to be here, and yeah, thanks. Who's next?
Okay. Hello, I'm Neil. I represent Element as a platinum sponsor of the foundation. I've been in and around the Matrix project, I guess, from the very earliest days, probably before it was even called Matrix. So I'm just hugely proud to be part of the governing board.
Thank you.
Hello and good morning. My name is Jan. I'm a representative of Gematik. Gematik is a silver member of the Matrix Foundation. And I am running the TI Messenger project in behalf of Gematik to be introducing a metric messenger for the whole German healthcare system, as I already mentioned yesterday in my talk. I don't know if you have seen it. And yeah, we are just very happy to be part of a foundation to accompany the travel and want to make the best out of it and the protocol for the future. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Ross. I'm one of the guardians of the Matrix Foundation, which is what we call ourselves, the Board of Governors. It's just a fancy term. Board of Directors, rather. And I've been involved in Matrix going back to 2016, I think, when I met Matthew and Amandine at the Decentralized Web Conference in San Francisco at the Internet Archive, and became friends with them. And I'm one of the governing board members from the Board of Directors. Oh, and in my real life, I'm a policy technologist. I work on tech policy. I live in Washington, D.C.
Hi, so I'm Rich. Your name is Rich VDH online. I'm here as a representative of the Spec Core team. I've been involved with the project since I joined Matthew and the team back in 2015. It's been a while, and that's me.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Travis.
Travis, of course.
So if you were here for the last talk, you know that I wear many hats. But yeah, I'm Travis. I'm also representing the Spec Core team with Rich there. But yeah, I've been involved since about 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. Yeah, was tricked into Matrix thanks to my makerspace, where I am also a director. So I have a certain soft spot for nonprofit governance.
Thank you, Travis. So I think that is all of the governing board members that we have here in the room. There are two more on site, Matthew and Amandine, but they're also quite busy while they're here. So actually, I guess that's 11, including me, 13 on site. And what's incredible, I just have to remark, is that that's still like only a little over half of the governing board. The governing board is 19 of us, 19 strong, and the way that it is, the bylaws are written, it can be up to 24 people currently. And some of you mentioned your affiliations and the role that those organizations play on the governing board and with the foundation. So I just want to unpack that for a moment because people may not be familiar with the actual composition of the governing board. Right, so the governing board is basically comprised of member representatives, right? How does one become a member representative? Well, first one has to become a member, right? So we have 3 different types of members in the Matrix.org Foundation. We have individual members. Actually, let me back up. We have community members, and those are, for instance, we have ecosystem members, so Matrix community events, community moderation efforts, LMSDK, all of the open source projects, those are the ecosystem members. They can apply to become an ecosystem member after they've been around for about a year and have shown that they are more than one person's passion project, right? There has to be some sort of community forming around something to be recognized as an ecosystem member. We also have associate members. Those are organizations and projects that may not be directly associated with Matrix. Maybe they use Matrix or they share our values, right? So the Eclipse Foundation is an associate member, GNOME Foundation, KDE, et cetera. Those are all members of the foundation as well. I also put individual members in the community bucket, even though they are also paying members. Individual members of the foundation are people like you and me who support the foundation at, I think it's 60 USD a year, roughly. And so in recognition of that, those folks have an opportunity to vote in elections and also stand for election. And we have, so those are more community representatives on the governing board. Community representatives, funder representatives, very key. We have our platinum, gold, and silver member tiers. Those are organizations that help actually fund the foundation, who really put in a lot of effort to help make us sustainable. And so each of those categories has some number of seats on the board and can stand for election. And then lastly, we have community funding. I think I actually covered it there, didn't I? Okay. So we have all these different categories, and there are a number of seats allocated to each. It's all in the bylaws. Go to the website if you really want to dig in. Feel free to ask me questions about it later. And these folks who just introduced themselves, early this year when we said, hey, it's time to run for the governing board, it's time to have our first ever elections, these are folks who raised their hands and whose peers voted them into this position. And I just want to stop for a moment and express my hope and my gratitude, because when you run an election for the first time, it's like running an event for the first time. You don't know who's going to show up. You don't know how many people are actually interested and willing to do the work. And so the number of candidates that we had for the governing board, to me, is such a phenomenal signal of how much people care, how broad the ecosystem is, and how invested people are and how much work they're willing to put in to make sure that the foundation delivers for the rest of the ecosystem. So just join me for a moment. Can we please thank our governing board members and everybody who was a candidate as well, just with a round of applause. So the last thing I'm going to say before we open up for some questions is that we're still figuring this out, right? Open governance is a journey, and it is an incremental journey. And it is, truth be told, a painstaking journey because it never goes as fast as anybody would like it to. So the way that the governing board is structured, there are a few things that we know, and then there are things that we're going to figure out as we go along. We know that the governing board has to meet at least twice a year, have official minuted meetings. Those minutes will be published after the meetings. Decisions, et cetera, will be published. We know that the governing board is responsible for a few key duties, but is also free to explore its own scope and think about its scope and, perhaps take on additional duties. The governing board, at the very least, is responsible for reviewing and hopefully approving an annual budget that I put together, myself or future managing directors. The governing board is also responsible for approving, or at least voting on, approving or rejecting any significant expenditure that we want to take on that's not already in the budget. I think the threshold is about 50,000 euros or something along those lines. The governing board also has to approve any new sort of lines of business that the foundation might want to get into. It'd be kind of weird if the foundation went off and decided to become a service provider or, I don't know. The foundation could do things, and we want to make sure that it's doing things that the ecosystem thinks are valuable for it to be doing. And so before we radically change and go into new strategic directions, the governing board weighs in on those things. So there are some very real responsibilities that the governing board has. How we approach those, we're still trying to figure that out. And one of the things that I really appreciate about our current governing board members is that they're extremely patient and also eager to get involved. We've already had some great conversations even before we've had any official meetings. And so with that, recognizing we have so little time, if you have questions, I hope you will put them in chat, but also I think we have time for just a few while we're here.
Yeah, we've got time for a few. Thank you, Josh. Thank you to the other members who introduced themselves. We actually had two more who introduced themselves in the chat, Andy Balam and Greg Sutcliffe. So if you want to ask them questions, you can do that in the chat. But for now, if you have any questions, please raise your hand or say it in the room. Perhaps you explain things so well that no questions are necessary.
How about I'll pose a question to our governing board members. What's something that you really want to get into in your time on the governing board? Each one of these governing board members wrote a platform, so they have opinions. We have another governing board member here, Matthew, who wears many hats.
No one else is going to answer. Trust and safety would be my number one thing, and also trying to make the most of the existing set of folks and the knowledge that they have about how Matrix works. One of the kind of killer advantages that Matrix has over other protocols is that the people who wrote it in the first place are still hanging around and know where the skeletons are buried and how to fix it eventually, and trying to keep that intact whilst also expanding it so that it's not a clique of people, but one that everybody can participate in is pretty important. I think it's easy to assume, we should all burn it to the ground and start over, whereas there's actually quite a lot of good stuff to build on if you understand the good things about it.
Thank you, Matthew.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not on the camera.
We also had an introduction from Thor Johansson. And from Greg, he says, I have a question for the audience. What do you want to see from the board?
Nice.
Does anyone want to answer that? Or are they just happy for the board to do whatever they want? Maybe what does the board want to start working on?
Well, I'll say that one of the experiences that we've had that I think was fairly edifying, if mildly stressful for all of us a little bit. I accidentally put our governing board through a stress test about a month ago. So if anybody remembers, I don't expect you to follow our blog closely, but we published a blog post called Protecting Projects at the Heart of Matrix fairly recently. And this was about reflecting on how we think about the projects under the auspices of the Matrix.org Foundation, right? I should say, this is a fairly common pattern with nonprofits. When nonprofits are not staffed and they're sort of an enthusiastic band of volunteers, nonprofits can accumulate a pretty chaotic set of responsibilities. And the list of projects that are, for instance, on the Matrix.org namespace on GitHub, also chaotic. And so we have to think about what belongs there and what is the relationship between the foundation and those projects. And now we don't have to go alone here or reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of open source foundations that we can learn from. And there are different ways that they relate to those projects. There are projects that, for instance, foundations will consider to be deeply core and will put a lot of work into channeling resources for development on those projects, whether or not they actually do the development on those projects. For instance, the Python Software Foundation cares a lot about CPython, understandably, right? And then there are projects that may not be so core, but still sort of live in the foundation. They take advantage of the fact that the foundation provides a legal structure, access to accounts payable and accounts receivable. Heaven forbid you want to host an event and you need to get insurance. Well, you don't want to put yourself on the line with liability. That's what organizations are for, right? And so I run a conference called North Bay Python. We're a member project of the Python Software Foundation, and we have to follow their governance rules, but we're just volunteers, right? And they don't invest in us except when we request grants from them. And so we have to think about, this is something that we're thinking about and working through. And so about a month ago, Matthew and I were working on this blog post, and I have to credit Matthew for this because we're all still getting in the habit of like, what do we need to run by the governing board? Like, what are they going to care about? And thankfully, they care about pretty much everything. I really appreciate that. And so Matthew had a great instinct there. It's like, no, we really should run this by the governing board. And so sure enough, we did. And the first draft of that blog post, admittedly, was pretty alarming for the governing board. And it was also alarming because I posted as like, hey, I'm going to publish this very soon. And like, I just want to make sure you're aware of this. It's like, we had to pump the brakes on that. We had to take a few days, and generally we want these processes to happen over a longer period of time, so we have the ability to really be deliberative about these things. But bless the governing board and their infinite patience. Everybody jumped in and provided like very, very helpful reviews and thoughts and perspectives. And at the end of that process, what we ended up publishing was pretty different from what we started with, right? The general idea was still much the same, but it was such an improvement over what we could have published in the first place. And what I really loved about that experience is that I think there's that, I won't name the person unless they want to name themselves, but there's one person in this room at least who is like, you know, I wasn't sure how much you would really listen to the governing board members, but you listened, and so thank you. And I think, while I hope not to stress us all out like that again, and there's a lessons learned about a process and how we work together, it was one of those moments, thank you, Sumner. It was one of those moments where we're learning how to work together, and we're learning that, yeah, no, open governance, we're serious about it, right?
I'll say something real quick. Yeah, that was me. And yeah, I'm really, really thankful for you listening. I think that we did, through that process, come to a better understanding of where we're all coming from. We want projects that are important to the Matrix ecosystem as a whole to be recognized as such and to be funded, hopefully, eventually, by the foundation. We want those projects to be seen as core to Matrix. And I think that's a really good direction to go. Did you have anything to add? Maybe, if you wanted to say.
Yeah, let me try. You touched on a very important point to me as well with what you just introduced us to. I think or one thing I look forward to very much is we have now on the governing board a lot of more perspectives from the community, from the ecosystem that goes beyond the historically grown core of what Matrix is made up of, governance-wise. And I look forward to improving, working on the communication. Yes, and there's actually another thing I would mention, since you asked what's the iterate. So I have a long list of things I want to address, but yeah, also something very dear to me is I'm perhaps already a bit privileged in a way because I'm already here working with you on this conference, and we have already been organizing other events as a community group, and not just me as a governing board member now, but also the group where I was proposed as a member out of, and I look forward to formalizing that kind of contribution process and seeing where else we can enable contribution in a similar way.
Absolutely, thank you. So, we have a closing remark, and then the bells are ringing.
Yeah, sorry, just for, not actually a remark, but a question. Both to the governing board and anybody else in the room. Do you think the Matrix Foundation should write software? Like W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, doesn't write software. It publishes specs, it kind of acts as a focal point for the community, it organizes conferences. Many other non-profit standards bodies effectively do the same thing. Should there be an engineering organization at all, independently somehow? No, there be a CTO of the Matrix Foundation? Should there be a VP engineering? This is a genuinely open question. Show of hands, who thinks Matrix Foundation should hire an engineering team? Couple of hands, couple of hands, some wobbly hands. Okay.
That is one of the big, important questions ahead of us.
Sorry for springing that on you with zero notice, and I'm not going to take that as gospel. That was not a vote. It was just interesting to see what the vibe in the room was. There you go.
Thank you very much. To Andrew, please. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing more questions and to working with the governing board members. I'm going to pass it off to Andrew for housekeeping. Thank you very much.
Another big round of applause to the governing board. and to everybody here who's coming to the conference and coming to make Matrix work and shine as it continues on for the next 10 years.